I never thought I would be the kind of woman who did something like this. I always believed I was happy, content even. I had a loving husband, a comfortable life, and a routine that never wavered. But sometimes, a routine can feel like a cage, and I didn't realize how trapped I was until he moved in next door. His name is Jake, 19 years old, tall, athletic, with that careless confidence that only young men have. The kind that makes you remember what it felt like to be young, to feel alive. The first time I really saw him was last summer. I was in my backyard, watering the plants, when he stepped outside shirtless, sweat glistening on his skin after mowing the lawn. He looked over and smiled, and something in me shifted. It was harmless at first, just a glance, a fleeting moment. But that moment stayed with me longer than it should have. My husband, Mark, is a good man. Stable, predictable, always busy with work. We used to have passion once, but over time, we became more like business partners than lovers. I told myself it was normal, that love changes. But the way my pulse quickened when I saw Jake? That wasn't normal. That was dangerous. One afternoon, I was carrying groceries inside when I heard his voice behind me. "Need some help with that?" I turned, and there he was, standing close, too close. His eyes held something playful, something knowing. I should have said no. I should have thanked him and walked inside. Instead, I nodded, watching as he grabbed the bags with ease, his strong arms flexing. Inside, the air felt different, charged. I became too aware of the space between us, the way his body moved, the way his cologne lingered in the air. "Your husband's at work?" he asked casually, setting the bags down. "Yeah," I said, my voice softer than I intended. A long silence stretched between us, the kind that makes you hyper-aware of everything. The way his fingers brushed mine when he handed me a bag, the way his lips parted slightly, as if he was about to say something but thought better of it. "Well," he finally said, flashing that cocky grin, "guess I'll see you around, Mrs. Carter." Mrs. Carter. The way he said it felt teasing, almost taunting. And I hated how much I liked it. I stood there long after he left, my heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. I told myself it was just a silly crush, nothing more. But deep down, I already knew the truth. This was the beginning of something dangerous. It started with stolen glances, little moments that seemed innocent enough until they weren't. I told myself I was just being playful, that it was harmless. But deep down, I knew I was walking toward something I couldn't turn away from. Then, one evening, everything changed. Mark was working late as usual. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that made me restless. I poured a glass of wine and stepped outside, hoping the warm night air would clear my mind. That's when I saw him, Jake, leaning against his car, scrolling through his phone. "Hey, Mrs. Carter," he called out, grinning. I rolled my eyes at the way he said my name, teasing me like he knew something I didn't. "You can just call me Olivia, you know. That'd make it less fun." He walked closer, stopping at the fence between our yards. The glow of the street lamp cast soft shadows over his face, making him look older than 19. More like a man than a boy. I should have gone inside. I should have ended the conversation right there. Instead, I leaned against the fence, too. "You always out here alone?" he asked. I shrugged. "Mark's busy." "Yeah," I figured. Never really see him around. His voice had a knowing edge to it. "Guess that means you get kinda lonely, huh?" My breath caught in my throat. The way he looked at me, like he was peeling back every layer of my thoughts, made my skin tingle. "That's not really appropriate," I murmured, but I didn't move. Jake smirked. "Neither is the way you're looking at me right now." I should have been offended, but I wasn't. Instead, my fingers tightened around my glass, my heart hammering in my chest. Then, as if testing something, he reached out just slightly, his fingertips grazing the back of my hand on the fence. It was barely a touch, but it set me on fire. I should have pulled away. I should have ended this before it started. Instead, I whispered, "You should go inside." Jake held my gaze, his smirk fading into something heavier, something real. He didn't step back. He didn't let go. "Do you want me to?" The air between us was electric, humming with something we weren't saying. I knew this was the moment. The last chance to stop before the line was completely crossed. But I didn't stop him. His fingers slid slowly up my wrist, a silent question I wasn't ready to answer. My breath came uneven, and for the first time in years, I felt something wake up inside me. Something reckless, something alive. Then a noise in the distance. A car door slamming, footsteps on the sidewalk. I yanked my hand away like I'd been burned, my chest rising and falling too fast. Jake exhaled a slow, amused breath. Guess I should go inside now. He left me there, shaking, breathless, knowing this was just the beginning. The first time it happened, it was quick, desperate, and completely wrong. And I knew I would do it again. It started with a message. Jake. Mark still at work? I hesitated, staring at the screen, knowing exactly where this would lead. But my fingers typed before my brain could stop them. Me, yes. A few minutes later, there was a soft knock at my back door. My heart pounded as I opened it, and there he was, standing in the dim light, his eyes filled with something dangerous. Are you gonna let me in? He murmured. I should have slammed the door in his face. Instead, I stepped aside. That night, everything blurred into heat, hands, and whispered names. I forgot who I was, forgot what was at stake. And when it was over, when I lay there catching my breath, I didn't feel guilt. I felt alive. That should have scared me. It didn't. We stole moments whenever we could. A brush of his hand when no one was looking. A kiss in the dark. Quick, heated encounters in the kitchen, the laundry room, the car parked down the street where no one would see us. Every second with him felt like chasing a high I couldn't quit. But with the thrill came the risk. One afternoon, as I slipped out of Jake's bedroom, I heard a voice from next door, my best friend Lisa, calling my name. My stomach dropped. She was standing in my front yard waiting for me. Had she seen me come out? Had she noticed how flushed I was? How my hair was slightly out of place? Hey, she said, squinting at me. I was knocking on your door. You weren't home. I forced a laugh. Just went for a walk. Needed some fresh air. Lisa's eyes flicked toward Jake's house for a second before meeting mine again. My heart pounded. Did she know? I changed the subject as quickly as I could, but that encounter stayed with me. One night, after another stolen moment, I lay in my own bed beside my husband, staring at the ceiling. Mark stirred, half asleep. You okay? I swallowed hard. Yeah, just couldn't sleep. He reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. I love you, you know. A lump formed in my throat. I had everything: security, stability, a man who cared for me. So why did I keep running to the boy next door? I turned on my side, away from Mark, my mind still replaying the way Jake had whispered my name just hours ago. I was in too deep, and I had no idea how to stop. Secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks. I thought I was careful. I thought no one suspected a thing. But I was wrong. It started with small things. Mark started watching me more closely. His usual distracted nods when I spoke turned into sharp glances, like he was trying to read between the lines of my words. You've been different lately, he said one night, his voice casual, but not really. Different how? I asked, forcing a smile. He hesitated. I don't know. Distant. My stomach tightened. Work's just been stressful, I lied. Maybe we should go on a trip, just the two of us. His face softened, and for a moment, guilt weighed on me heavier than ever. But that guilt disappeared the next time I was with Jake. One afternoon, I was in Jake's room, the door barely closed behind us, when we heard it, footsteps on the porch. My heart slammed against my ribs. Shit, Jake whispered. It's your husband. I froze. My car was in the driveway. There was no excuse for me to be here. Mark knocked on the front door. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and texted him. Me in the shower. Can you come back in 10 minutes? Outside silence. Then my phone buzzed. Mark, okay. I sagged against the wall, breathless. That was too close. Jake smirked. Admit it. You love the thrill. I glared at him, but he wasn't wrong. And that scared me more than almost getting caught. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. Mark's suspicious eyes, the near miss, the way Jake made me feel. And I knew. This couldn't last. The next day I met Jake at our usual spot, his car parked down the street. We have to stop, I said, forcing the words out before I lost my nerve. Jake tilted his head amused. You don't mean that? I do, I insisted, even though my voice shook. That's not real. It's a fantasy. He leaned in, his lips ghosting over mine. Then why are you shaking? Because I wanted him. Because stopping felt impossible. But then my phone buzzed. Mark. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. He knew something was wrong. I pulled back. I have to go. Jake's smirk faded. So that's it. I nodded, but we both knew the truth. This wasn't over. Not really. That night, I lay beside my husband, feeling the weight of everything. Mark turned to me, searching my face. Are you happy, Olivia? I opened my mouth, but no words came out, because I didn't know the answer. Want more thrilling and dramatic stories? Like and subscribe to never miss what happens next.